going to have two fully operational clinics here on site. The University of Oklahoma Sports Medicine Clinic and then the University of Oklahoma Physical Therapy Clinic. And we'll be right upstairs. And the space is set up where our patients will come in and we won't be violating any HIPAA laws that we'll be talking about here in a moment. But it also has this sort of this nice transition into the fitness area. And actually, any of you who will be up on the fitness floor at any given time that the clinic is open might see some of our clinicians working with our patients out right next to a member on a treadmill. So who needs HIPAA training? Well, everybody who is going to have some degree of contact with patients. And that's not just giving them care, but it's also greeting them at the front door. It's people who are dropping their kids off at Play and Learn, and we will have patients who are taking advantage of that. You may be officiating a game that we either have a patient who we've released to do that, or we're just kind of letting them try it out, but they have some real restrictions that the patient will know about. So a lot of different ways that we will be communicating as members of the same team with each other. Now, HIPAA in and of itself, a lot of people spell it wrong, but it is HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act. And essentially, what this boils down to, I put this up just to make you go, God, I'm glad I don't have to know all of this. What it boils down to is, it's a law that requires every healthcare practitioner, every member of a healthcare providing team, to keep a person's health information personal. So think about the last time you went to see your physician, and just think about the fact that what if that physician posted on Facebook or something like that? You know, you wouldn't like that. And that's the idea behind this, is we're not sharing any information with anybody who doesn't need to know. So the baseline of this law is to protect health information, and also to make it easier to bill for insurance and reimbursement, something that you all don't need to worry about as well. So the good news here is that even though this law looks very complex, it's really straightforward. There are just some things that we need to do in order to keep private our patients' health information. And health information can be conveyed in a lot of different ways. Medical records, notes from one person to another. Probably the most common one that will be happening here is verbal conversation, maybe between a physical therapist and somebody who is teaching group exercise. I might say, this person really would benefit from your class. And so once we discharge them from our care, we're going to have them drop into your class. And so that kind of a conversation is something that will really happen. Now, the law, the federal law that requires everybody to keep this information private, and if not, you can go to jail, or you can be fined, not you personally, but your facility can be fined millions of dollars, actually. So it's a serious thing, and there are 18 things that are considered protective health information. So I've got the first 10 up here, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but highlighted in red are the ones that really are going to be the ones that you have to worry about, and these are very straightforward. So the person's name, that is one way that you can easily identify an individual, and so using the person's name is a patient's name is not acceptable unless the patient says, please, call me Ken, and then that is totally fine after that. Addresses, geocodes, what I mean by that as it relates to most people around here is tagging somebody on Facebook where you can identify them, but the person's address is also a way that you can identify who they are. Their email address, and then probably, well, photographs are the things that you all are going to be the most concerned with. Some of these others only pertain to the medical record, which I have to worry about. So if you have somebody who comes to the YMCA as a patient, our goal is that a casual observer isn't going to be able to tell a patient from a member from somebody who's just visiting. And so we're not going to be identifying a patient saying, oh, are you a patient here to go see OU? That has just singled the person out. So as much as the why, probably you all are actually encouraged to know a person's name. If we have a patient who is currently under our care, we're not going to be able to say, hi, Mr. Randall or Ken, how are you doing today? So the good news is these are acceptable, and it's a lot easier. You don't have to remember a person's name because you're actually encouraged not to use it. So just being very pleasant, welcoming somebody to the facility. How are you doing? Anything that would convey the person's diagnosis is obviously protected health information. So a person who comes in for a follow-up visit, even if you know they're being treated for a knee injury, we're not going to be able to say, how's your knee doing today? But you certainly can say, you look great. And so, again, it's just sort of these general pleasantries that will make the person feel welcome and will not break any of the HIPAA regulations. Some things, though, that we can't do is, again, calling the person by name, asking them, you know, how are things in Sand Springs, America? You know, that kind of starts giving away where the person might be from, and a person could actually determine who that person is from. If it's their birthday, not so good. And again, distinguishing what their diagnosis is. And then it probably would never happen, but if there's a photo taken and it's posted on Facebook, or you post it on Facebook and tag them, that would also violate HIPAA. Now, somebody had a really good question today that when a member comes in, they sign a release that we can take photos and use that as part of the Y campaign. What we will do is make sure that if there is a patient in the background and there are photos being taken, that either the patient consents to that or not. And if by chance something happens where a patient is in the background, a quick little Photoshop of blurring their face out probably is not going to make any difference to the picture whatsoever, but it suddenly makes our life a whole lot more compliant. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be sharing information with a number of members of the YMCA team. And so the HIPAA law says that we are able to do that it is legal for me to talk to somebody who's teaching a health exercise class, group exercise class, or anybody who's associated with the Y if they have a need to know that as part of their job. But what it also tells us is it's got to be the minimum necessary for the person to do their job. Okay, so if we do have a patient who we are okaying them to participate in sport, I might talk to one of the officiates and just say, this guy had an ACL injury. You don't have to worry about it at all, but he should be wearing his brace. So if you see him show up without his brace on, it's not your responsibility, but if you want to remind him to wear his brace, that would be great. And that would be the extent of the conversation. So it's the minimum necessary to do the job that we all are going to be doing. So what I really appreciate about this Healthy Living Center is that it's going to be a continuum of care. That just like you have a new member who may be brand new to fitness, who is doing their healthy start, or you may have somebody who is on the path but they still need some guidance, or they're really elite at what they do, they know what they're doing and they just show up. Those individuals at some point may be injured and they might become a patient. So we will provide this continuum of care. The other end of that continuum is that a person who's a patient, our goal is that we will discharge them to a healthy lifestyle, which includes exercise. And so we would love to see our patients transition and becoming members. So you kind of see how it can shift back and forth from one to the other. And OU and YMCA staff are going to be integral parts of that team that works along that continuum. You guys may not know this yet, but you're going to be wearing polo shirts that have both the YMCA and the OU logos on it side by side. And the idea is that a person who walks in is not going to be able to tell who's from OU and who's from the YMCA. Same thing goes with our patients and our members, but we're not going to be able to tell the difference between them. So you might be going, okay, so how do I know who I can talk about and who I can't? The good news is the clinic is going to take care of all of that, but a patient signs this form that basically says, I give you permission to share with any YMCA member information about my health care, so that when we need to talk to you about this person coming to your class or being in a game, they have given us permission to do that. What your responsibility is if I come to talk to you about one of our folks that we are discharging or who's going to be dropping into your class or maybe interacting with you in Play and Learn, is to say, okay, before we have this conversation, you will say, have they signed that form? And if we're doing our job, we might even say, they've already signed the consent form, here's the information. And then once we start to talk about information, really the important thing is just to look at where you're at, how you're having the conversation. Human nature is to be kind of curious about what's going on with that person. Why do they have that thing on their leg, or what's wrong with their shoulder? Very innocent. But unfortunately, we can't answer any of those questions about somebody's health status. And so being able just to say, I'm sorry, either I don't know, or I'm sorry, I really can't answer that. Very politely, no big deal. But for the most part, most of our patients are probably going to be happy to share their stories. And if they consent to do that, if they say, it's fine to call me Kim, then it's fine for you to do that, and you're not going to be breaking any laws whatsoever. I think the big thing is just keeping in mind where you're having the conversations and making sure that it's really just between you and the healthcare provider, or the healthcare provider and whoever is the member of the Y team, that there's not any other ears that might be hearing that. So, last slide. Almost poised to get out of here. This is just wrapping it up here. So, it is a law that we have to be very thoughtful and very serious about protecting our patients' health information. The most common health information is the person's name, their address, a photographic image of them, or a tag which could show where they're located or where they're at, or talking about their diagnosis. So all of those things will be things that we're not going to talk about with our patients unless they've signed the consent form or unless they've said, hey, it's fine to talk about.